Hello, we are going to be going through the event detail request form uh, as part of training. So I am here on the Involvement Network to start off. This form, the live version of it, will be under Registered Student Organization Management. It is a group that you can be a part of based on what trainings you have completed. So that's where you're going to go to. Once you're on that page, you can scroll down to the forms section, and you can see this is the one we're going to work on during this training. So you can click on it there. If for some reason it's not showing for you, just click on View All Forms, and that will bring you to the full list. You should be able to access it there. I already have one open, and we're just going to go through it here. So it's really important to remember to be as detailed as possible. There are some instructions here about the due dates for these forms as well. It has to be turned in at least 2 weeks before an event with resources. Please remember these are minimum dates. These are not the date it has to be turned in on. Earlier is always better, and you are able to make minor adjustments and changes after you've submitted your form. So if there's for some reason a barrier that's not letting you answer all the questions, feel free to submit, but make sure to share that information about why you don't have a final answer. And staff can work with you to make sure that that's adapted and at least they're ready for kind of what the possibilities are in advance. So this is really a place to share as much information as you can, but it also can be the start of a conversation to help your event be what you want it to be. Now, just a note, the fall 2020 we know is full of a lot of different challenges for everybody. So this form might not be used very much for events during that time. But if it is asked of you, please do submit it. For events that are happening online, if you have asked for support, there will probably be a little bit different of a process to confirm the details of those events. So these are for in-person events, you'll be using the event detail request. So 2 weeks out is important for pretty much everything, has to be at least 2 weeks out. For anything that's considered a major event, that would be something in the ballroom, and you can see all the different spaces that are listed here: ballroom, Horace Mann, auditorium, Tinsley Center, ECC, outside. Vendors are involved, outside spaces are often included in this. So really anything that's kind of big is 3 weeks out at minimum. Really though, those types of events, there should be conversations even earlier about your plans and your vision for that event. Please don't hesitate to have conversations with us in CSE and with university events, and we'll help you to navigate who's the right person to talk to about your event if there are any questions. Wonderful. So again, being very detailed is very important in this form. Event title and name. So I just called this test event. Now, if you happened to put in a reservation under a different name and you've changed it, I would recommend putting reserved as and put that other event in here. So, maybe this was reserved originally as huge banquet, something like that, So just make sure you're putting, again, as much detail as possible to help folks understand what event you're working on and what the details are there. Primary sponsor, that's your student organization. I've just put in BSU involved as a filler for here, but your organization name should go there. Please note that the organization that's taking the lead is who should go here. We understand that many organizations work together, and that's awesome. We want you to collaborate. We want you to co-sponsor. But there needs to be one organization who is identified as the primary sponsor. The other organizations should all be listed as co-sponsors. Their input is extremely important and a big part of this as well. But the primary sponsor is the ones that should be leading the planning and implementation. So if you're talking about who is managing the table setup, who's managing the room arrangements, who's managing the where things go, that should be assigned to one key contact, one person even, and one organization. And we are happy to help you navigate that as well. We understand that can be complicated, but This again helps with communication pieces as we move through the event planning process. So registered student organization representative. So from that organization, who is the person that will be that main point of contact? They should also be present at the event. That's really important. If possible, they should be there at that day too. And they should be the person who is completing this form. So they should have gone through training and they are completing this form and submitting it. So I put myself in there. I've included my Bridgewater email. Bridgewater email should be the preference for communication. And then also a phone number in case there was any questions that needed to be followed up on if we're having a hard time reaching you. I've also included who the faculty or staff member who's either attending or is involved with the planning. Especially for major events, there should be a staff member. Your organization advisor is the preference, who is kind of there as your support and helping you through this process. And we're happy to also communicate with them as things move along. Again, we want to help everyone navigate the different complexities of planning an event and making sure that's done as efficiently and effectively as possible. So let us know who that person is. And we can also discuss if that person should be in attendance at the event. That depends, again, on the type of event. And if that person's not able to be present, maybe we need to ask for a different faculty or staff member to be present on the day of. As you go into event information, again, being very detailed is important. You want to include a description of the event. Maybe it's something around the purpose, your vision. Again, share as much as possible. And it could also be an event schedule or an agenda, activities, food, performers, everything that you think will happen at that event. Don't be afraid to be detailed here. Again, the more that you can include, the better. If this box isn't enough, which for many events it won't be, please feel free to use something like a Word document and upload that document here using this file upload. Pre-event time, this is the time you need access before the room opens for the event. So this would be your time to do sound checks, set up decorations, etc. So that's saying if my event starts at 5 p.m., I want to be able to get into the room at 3 p.m. in order to do all these other things. Sometimes that can be a tough window depending on the room setup beforehand. So please be clear about that even during the reservation stage if you can. So pre-event time means you have access to that space. You're requesting access to that space early in order to get ready for your guests to arrive for the event itself. EMS reservation number, this is on the event confirmation that you receive. So after you've submitted your reservation with the Center for Student Engagement, you will receive a copy of your reservation. There's a number on there that shares the your reservation number. So just type that in here. I've just included one as an example, but that is required. That's something you should have. And if you don't have access to that reservation for some reason, again, that's a reason to reach out to us and just ask where that reservation is or if you could get another copy of it. You also want to include all of the spaces that are reserved. So I've just included the RSU ballroom, but I really should be more specific. So if I was saying it's the large ballroom, but maybe I also have reserved RSU 201 as a preparation room or as a room for a meet and greet after the event. So you would want to just list them all out here. If you've made arrangements for a rain date or snow date, what is the date itself and what's the location? You also want to include the event date itself. That's important. The start time. Now, this is the doors open time when you are welcoming guests into your event. And then what's the end time? So this means the time that you expect everyone to be out of the room so that staff can start to come in and break down the space as well. Now, this would be more when you expect guests to leave. If you need a little bit more time afterwards, please make sure that's notified as well. So if you need breakdown time, that should be designated here. So I could actually say event ends at 6 o'clock p.m., but we expect breakdown to take an hour. Again, if you have questions or issues with that, please let us know, and we can work through you with that too. Your funding source is also important to identify here. So if you did request SGA funding, you need to include the budget request ID number. And I'll show you that in a minute of how to get that information. But if your funding source is another one of these options, please do check off the one that's most appropriate. Maybe you're using more than one, and again, you can check off the ones that are the most appropriate to your event specifically. Here you would want to estimate the number of attendees, where they're coming from, so whether it's BSU community, guests of the community, or general public. So if you're expecting guests, there might be additional requirements that have to be met before it could be advertised as such. So please be sure to talk to our staff, and we can help you with navigating that as well. These simple questions just help us to understand, are you working with any outside service providers, whether that's a DJ, sound system rental, performers, novelties, etc. Are you planning to offer food or looking for any services that BSU's catering service might be providing? So that could even include things like tablecloths or utensils. So no matter what your plans are, say you need tablecloths, but you're offering no food, you would want to check yes here. Is this event an outdoor event? Yes or no? So I've checked off yes for all of these, but normally you're not going to be choosing yes for all of these questions. I'm only doing it to show you so that we can go through some other questions. These questions do ask you additional pieces later in the form, so please be sure you're as clear on these as you can be. So let's move on to the next step here. And here is a little bit more detail on funding. So if you did receive SGA funding, we do ask you to print out or save a PDF copy of it, and you can upload that here. If you have done funding through a different account, whether that's through your organization account, a fundraising account, program council, or other areas, we do ask that you've submitted a purchase request to cover your expenses in advance. So that's more of a planning tool for those expenses. And then you can enter in the purchase request information. So let me just pull up another, we'll just take an example here. And so to find your those different financial numbers, whether it's the purchase request number or that budget request number, you go into your manage organization piece, and then you would go to the pancakes over here and then find finance. This is a tool that the president and treasurer always have access to. If others in your organization need this information, either they should consult with those two officers or talk about if you should actually change the settings for who has access to that. So here you can see the different kinds of finance requests. We're talking about budget requests. These are SGA requests. And you can see the number right here. So this 73352 would be the SGA fund budget request number. And purchase requests, these are when you want to spend your money, and these are covered in other trainings. So I would take this number of the 2624 is the purchase request number as it was being requested. All right, so let's go back over to the form. And we'll head on to the next page. So here, this is questions about your room setup. You can access resources like the Space Grid, which talks to you about different standard setups and room capacities for various spaces on campus. So this can be a useful tool. Please note again, if you are holding an event in person, if you did receive permission for doing something in person in fall 2020, these spaces, this grid is going to be a little bit different. So please be sure to consult with our department before making any plans about your number of guests who are permitted. Here you go through the different setups, and there's even little tools to kind of help you guide through of what this means. So banquet, for example, is seating at round tables with chairs, traditionally 8 chairs per table. You can also even see a little diagram of what that looks like when you click the eye icon next to that description. So you choose that setup that you would like, how many people you want it set up for. If it's not your normal or it's not the estimated attendance, if there's a reason for that, whether it's you wanted more seats or less seats, it might be good to just identify that so that the staff working with you can help you navigate that appropriately and get the setup the way you would like. If there's other things that you would like to include or a different type of diagram or setup, you could use this box here and the upload file to include a diagram or picture or drawing, or even a more detailed description of your setup request. The additional questions here go through some other setup type information. So admission tables, food tables, pipe and drape. And there's little descriptions again that help you to understand what those are as you walk through it. Audio, visual, and technology needs. Again, trying to aim for what specifically you need. If you do have an outside vendor or performer coming, please be sure to check in their contract. And if you don't have that information, that's something we can, again, assist you with. But if they have a certain type of microphone need or a certain preference, it's good to have that information outlined here. So you don't want to be requesting a wireless handheld mic if they would prefer to stand at a podium. So make sure you're checking with the vendor or with the performer you're working with. For a computer presentation or screen projection, again, go through everything you're hoping to do as part of your event. Many of the different pieces here help you to understand what is possible in different spaces on campus and what you also need to be aware of. So if it's going to be something like you're going to be using a Mac computer or performer or vendor is bringing a Mac computer and needs to connect it, they do need to provide their own adapters for those types of computers. So just as something to keep a heads up on, make sure you're reading the form as you go through because these little details are very important for your planning and the success of your event. Movie and TV show screenings, so you do want to make sure that you're always getting movie rights taken care of, and that is covered as well in another training, but here you do want to just outline that so we can understand what your plans are if you are going to be screening a movie or TV show during your event. So again, can walk through these different ways of how to do your setup and other information that's asked for. On this page, related to if you are working with an outside vendor or performer, and it does go through some different questions related to that. So if you're working with a vendor who's doing a novelty or inflatable or a ride or that kind of experience, then you would want to say yes, and you want to describe that and also the expected arrival time that they'll be there. If part of their contract includes more details about their setup needs, you should be uploading that file or forwarding it over to the staff to make sure that we have that information. So again, that it's being accommodated and discussed as to what is possible for your event. If you're not working with them, you just click no and you can move on to the next piece. If the person that you're working with is an outside speaker or performer, if they're a DJ, all of these are questions that you can step through as well. So please note with DJs that they are expected to provide all equipment, including speakers and microphones. It can also be really useful when you are bringing in a DJ, if you also have a performer, that the DJ actually takes care of all of the sound equipment and that the performer would also use. So if you have a performer and a DJ, can the DJ provide the microphones? And then we don't have to worry about BSU providing that equipment. It just makes it easier. It makes the event work a little bit smoother for the logistics on the day of. Then again, you add what information, or I'm sorry, what other setup needs that those folks may need. Again, if there's a rider or other details about what they need, please do upload that as well. And then another question here of if you're working with an external food vendor or restaurant or caterer. When it comes to catering, this information is very important. Catering through BSU dining is required to be submitted at least 2 weeks in advance. All catering requests by student organizations have to be managed through this process of confirming your event. So they should not be submitted directly by you or a member of your organization. So again, step through here, all the different pieces. If you need access to the menus, we can definitely help you with that. Again, during fall 2020, there are some different restrictions on use of food service during events. Everything must be prepackaged in order for attendees to be able to grab something and take it away. There is no opportunities for food to just be out in the open or served by members of an organization. So make sure to take some time to go through all of these details as well. Moving on to the next, these questions relate to if there's an outdoor event, and there is a specific policy related to outdoor events. So make sure that you're taking the time to read through that and that you do understand it. And these different questions around rain plans and things like that are all important as part of your process. Again, not everybody needs to answer these questions. It's based on how you answered earlier questions in the form, if you even see these. So this seems really long, but yours should be a little bit shorter when you're filling it out. When you get to this page, it's always important on the involvement network that you take one last look, and then you do finally hit the submit button to finalize your submission. So at any point, make sure that you talk with us. If you have any questions, you're also welcome to print this out. You can save it as a PDF even and have it available to you on a device when you're having conversations. If there aren't any changes that need to be made after you've submitted, reach out, make sure you're communicating that, ask questions, communicate, be as detailed as possible. Big advice with all of the event planning processes. So thanks a lot and wishing you a lot of success in all of your events.